Good Wednesday afternoon, everybody. Welcome back down to my library. And today, this is a long overdue video, but I'm finally going to give you guys my February wrap up. So I managed to read 8 books. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and get started and give you guys my brief thoughts on each book. So I have a little bit of a variety here. I have like literary fiction, short story collections, horror, and a memoir. Let's get this thing kicked off. Get my trusty notebook here, and the first book I completed in February was The Extraordinary Life of Sam Hell by Robert Dugoni. And this was on Audible. And this was a literary fiction novel that was coming of age. And it was about like this kid who had like a weird pigmentation disease in his eye that caused both of his eyes to become red. So that's why they call him Sam Hell. The only friend that he befriended in his life was a black kid, and there was like an on and off relationship with one of his girlfriends. And this was a really, really good novel. I really enjoyed it. And that was the first book. So I gave this 5 stars. Next one is my first Kindle read. Little different than my first book, but this is Lovesick by John Athen, and this was an extreme horror novella that I read through my Kindle. This book was messed up. It was about this man who had the hots for his girlfriend, but he found out that she was cheating on him. So he feels sick at witnessing love. So once he gets that information, he abducts her and tortures her and gives her every disease under the moon. I mean, I'm talking like STDs and hepatitis. It's really gross stuff. And there is no remorse for this dude at all. So he literally just kept her chained in his apartment until she wasted away. But he still loved her in death. So when this thing wraps up, it's really, really messed up because he decides to infect himself with these diseases, and he has the audacity to try and infect everyone in Los Angeles, causing like a widespread epidemic. Well, he ends up drowning in a reservoir in a homeless camp. It's yo. But this might have been one of the most extreme horror novels I've read so far. And I gotta say, I really enjoyed it because I'm sick and depraved, I guess. But I ended up giving this 5 stars as well. Okay, moving on. My next read was The World Wasn't Ready for You by Justin C. Key. And this was my first collection of short stories. This was pretty much a collection of black horror, if you will. There's like stories about substance use, gang violence, and other social issues. The two that really stood out to me in this collection is One Hand in the Coffin and The Spider King. Those were definitely the two best, in my opinion. One Hand in the Coffin was a short story about grief, and The Spider King, kind of like a metaphor for substance use. So, the author got inspiration from like Scream and Get Out. And this was just his vision on like horror and mostly sci-fi. But to me, this was more sci-fi. This one was just okay. But if it weren't for those two stories I mentioned, this would have been a lower rating. But I ended up giving this 3 stars. And moving on, I have my next Kindle read. And it's a long title. All You Need Is Love and a Strong Electric Current by Mackenzie Kiera. And this was almost on the verge of extreme horror, but it wasn't as extreme as Lovesick. But this is about a paramedic who has a lustful eye for cold. And her partner, which ended up being her boyfriend, dies horrifically in a snowplow accident, and she keeps him alive in a freezer, and all she wants to do is just have sex with him. That's this whole novella. But she snaps near the end of this, and it's almost like American Psycho in a way, because there's different point of views, especially in first person. This one was very weird and kind of uncomfortable at times. Yay. But I ended up giving this 4 stars. So moving on, I have Boldly Go, Reflections of Life and Awe and Wonder by William Shatner. This was his memoir about life and Star Trek. So, nothing much to say here. It's just William Shatner and his rise to fame. This was on Audible, and I gave this 4 stars. I did want to read this because I do enjoy William Shatner as a person, but not the biggest Star Trek fan at all. But I really did enjoy this as a whole. So that was book number 5. Book number 6 is a little short story called Murder at the Royal Ruby by Nita prose. And this was part of the Obsession thriller series on Kindle Unlimited. So obviously I read this on my Kindle. And this thing was only like not even 30 pages. And it was like a small murder mystery that took place at a theater. And everybody's a suspect. So the victim is like this starlet on stage, and there's like a chandelier with like a deer antler or something that just pierces her neck. So this is a very, very quick read, and I found it to be very predictable on who did it, but that's all I got for that one. I ended up giving this 3 stars. Next one was The Mosquito by B.A. Paris, and this was also on my Kindle. This one was 32 pages or something. I did not like this at all. I found it to be very confusing. It's basically about like this man who is part of a divorce, and he's in Paris and he gets stung by a mosquito. Yeah, that's all I can tell you. I did not like this at all. I gave this 2 stars. And finally, to wrap up February completely, you guys wonder if I read physical media? Well, I do. I ended up finishing Stephen King's Everything's Eventual, and this has 14 dark tales. And this collects stories like 1408, Riding the Bullet, Autopsy Room 4, Little Sisters of Illyria, and many more. So this one was kind of a hit and miss for me. I think the 4 that like really stand out are The Little Sisters of Illyria, Riding the Bullet, 1408, and Autopsy Room 4. Oh, and Lunch at the Gotham Cafe. So there were 5 stories that stood out to me. But my favorite story in here, spoiler alert, is Riding the Bullet. Because this was kind of like a vanishing hitchhiker type of story that also dealt with grief. So essentially, Riding the Bullet is about this college kid who is about ready to see his mom pass away, and he's just trying to get to her before she does. And he gets picked up by a ghost who claims that he rode the Bullet, which was like a roller coaster in New Hampshire. It was a really, really good short story. So I'll have my full thoughts on this when I rank these stories, but I ended up giving this 4 stars. It's a good collection, but it's not my favorite. So those are the 8 books that I managed to complete in February. Hope you guys enjoyed, and I am currently in the middle of Dune by Frank Herbert. I'm almost done with book 1. I am finally reading American Psycho, and I'm also going through Blanky by Keelan Patrick Burke on my Kindle. So I always have media to consume. But that's all I got for this video. Hope you guys enjoyed. And pretty soon I'm going to give you guys my ranking and review of Everything's Eventual. So stay tuned for that. And I'll see you guys in a few minutes. Adios. Peace.